Hi, I'm Aislinn. My sister dragged me by the hair out of a bridal boutique while screaming that I manipulated our mother. And the worst part? No one stopped her. Not my mother, not my fiance. They just watched. That was the day I realized I wasn't invisible. I was disposable. So when a stranger stepped in and warned her, touch her again and regret, I started to wonder, how many times have I been silent just to keep peace? And what happens when silence no longer protects you, but betrays you? I adjusted my bracelet 3 times before walking into the dining room. It was one of those little things that didn't matter, but somehow felt like everything. The weight of anticipation was heavier than my engagement ring, which I kept glancing at, not out of vanity, but to remind myself this moment was real. I was engaged to a man who was steady, kind, and maybe too quiet, but mine. The monthly family dinner at my parents' house was never meant to be complicated, just lasagna, breadsticks, and thinly veiled comparisons. But this time, it was supposed to be different. This time, I had something to share, something worthy. For once, I was walking in with news. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. Maribel, my mother, was plating Caesar salad with the precision of someone pretending she wasn't irritated. Coraine, my older sister, was wearing a peach blouse and that lipstick she used when she wanted attention without asking for it. Fenella, my fiancé, sat at the end of the table, legs crossed, phone tucked politely beside his plate. As I took my seat, I caught Maribel's eye. I smiled, nervous and proud. "I have something to say," I began, my voice light but purposeful. Everyone looked up. "I'm engaged." Fenella gave a half nod, modest and mild. I squeezed his hand under the table. There was a pause, barely a second, but long enough to notice. Coraine laughed. "That's wonderful, Aislinn," she said. "You know, it reminds me of when Paul almost proposed in Savannah. Remember that trip, Mom?" "Oh, yes," Maribel said, instantly lighting up. "He was such a charming young man." "He had that Irish setter, the one who used to jump into the fountain," Coraine added, eyes glistening with nostalgia. I blinked. The conversation pivoted faster than I could anchor myself. My announcement had become a footnote in Coraine's almosts. I watched as the table dissolved into laughter over a dog, a non-existent proposal, and a memory that wasn't mine. Fenella tried to re-engage, asking about wedding plans, but it was too late. Maribel redirected again, asking Coraine about a photo shoot she was doing for a local jewelry brand. I sat still, folding my napkin. Not angrily, not sadly, just folding. My moment had passed like a whisper in a loud room. Later that night, after we left and I sat in the passenger seat of Fenella's car, I couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't rage. It was recognition. This wasn't the first time. I had always been the support beam in a house where Coraine got the spotlight and I was the foundation, necessary but unacknowledged. The next morning, I called the bridal boutique to confirm the appointment we'd set 2 weeks earlier. I had chosen a minimalist satin gown, understated but stunning. I was ready to see it again, try it on with the new custom adjustments. "Hi, this is Ashlyn Hayes," I said to the receptionist, trying to sound cheerful. "I just wanted to confirm my final fitting for Thursday at 3. There was a pause on the other end. "Oh, Ms. Hayes, yes. Let me check. It looks like the deposit was shifted to another gown, one listed under Coraine Hayes." I sat up straighter. "That's my sister," I said carefully. "I'm so sorry. According to our system, the payment reference was updated by the client on file, Maribel Hayes. She requested the deposit apply to the lace-back design in the Evening Bloom collection. It was logged yesterday morning." I didn't speak for several seconds. "Thank you," I finally said. "Would you like us to restore your previous selection?" she asked, hesitantly. "No," I replied. "I'll call back." I hung up and stared out the kitchen window. A squirrel was darting across the lawn, fearless and unbothered. Unlike me. Maribel had paid the deposit, yes. But now, the money was behind Coraine's dress. Coraine didn't even have a wedding date. It wasn't an accident. It was a hierarchy. That afternoon, I went to the park to breathe, to walk it off. The trees were bare, branches skeletal in the winter light. I passed a woman pushing a stroller and a man walking his retriever. Everyone looked comfortable in their place. "Sometimes," I whispered to myself, "people treat you as replaceable so long, you start to believe you are. I recalled something Maya Angelou once said. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. I wasn't trying to be amazing anymore. I was just trying to be acknowledged. That evening, as Fenella and I cooked dinner, well, I cooked and he read something on his tablet. I told him about the boutique. He barely blinked. Maybe it was just a clerical error. Your mom probably didn't realize. I set down the wooden spoon more firmly than I intended. She didn't not realize, Fenella. She submitted the change. He shrugged. She's trying to help. It's probably not that deep. I smiled, just enough to end the conversation. But I knew then, next time, I wouldn't let anyone handle things for me. 3 days later, I opened my phone to find a tagged photo on Instagram. Coraine. At the boutique. In my dress. The caption read, "Just checking out some ideas for my sis. Maybe I'll go first." I stared at the screen for a full minute before I realized I was holding my breath. The boutique smelled like vanilla-scented linen and the faint musk of old carpeting. I walked in 10 minutes early, clutching a paper folder with my fitting details and deposit receipts, just in case. After what happened with the payment switch, I wasn't taking chances. My heels made a quiet click against the floor as I stepped in, greeted with a warm smile by the assistant at the front, though there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, and maybe discomfort. "Hi," I said, offering the folder. "Eshlyn Hayes. I'm here for the 3:30 fitting?" The woman nodded, hesitated. "Of course, yes. Give me just 1 second." She vanished behind a white-paneled door, leaving me to glance around the waiting area. Magazine covers with glowing brides and glittering fonts stared back at me, all promising happiness, perfection, spotlight. Moments later, a different assistant returned, this one younger, newer perhaps. "Miss Hayes, there's just a slight overlap." "Another Hayes bride is currently in one of our fitting rooms," she said quietly, voice soft, as though hoping I wouldn't make her repeat it. "Another Hayes bride." I didn't need her to clarify. My heart skipped, not in surprise, but in confirmation. Of course it was Coraine. How many times, I thought, can someone take what isn't theirs and still be celebrated for it? I followed the assistant down a narrow hallway. "We'll take you to our second fitting room. It's slightly smaller but cozy." I nodded. I'd known this feeling before. The detour, the backup plan, the second option. It felt familiar, too familiar. The room was dimmer, less spacious. There was no wall-length mirror, just a standing one leaned into a corner. I sat down quietly while she stepped out to check on my dress. Laughter floated in through the wall. I couldn't mistake it. Coraine's voice, syrupy sweet with charm only strangers fell for. And then, Maribel, my mother. Her laughter, too. They were inside the main fitting room, the one I was originally scheduled for. I didn't need to press my ear to the wall to know the energy. Light, airy, collaborative. My phone buzzed. I checked it. No messages from Fenella. Not that I was expecting one. I tapped record on my voice memos, not for evidence, but for memory. "This will not be erased like last time," I whispered. The assistant returned a moment later, fidgeting. "There's been a slight delay with the alterations on your gown," she said, apologizing. "But we do have several new samples in this room if you'd like to try something while you wait." I looked at the rack. Nothing was wrong with those dresses. Some were beautiful even, but none were mine. "No, thank you," I said. "I'll wait." 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the door opened, and in came Coraine, with Maribel right behind her, both smiling like nothing was wrong, as though they weren't intruding, like they hadn't just hijacked my appointment. "Oh, hey!" Coraine beamed, her hand holding up a flowing veil. "We were just previewing. Didn't know you'd be early." Maribel added, as if rehearsed, "Your sister wanted to help you pick the veil. She's been so thoughtful lately." Thoughtful. Even the assistant seemed uncertain whether to stay or run. Her hand hovered near the fabric binder, unsure if she should be preparing a sample or stepping away. "I just thought this veil looked so classic," Coraine continued, holding it up in front of me. "Very modest but desperate, don't you think?" I didn't flinch. My fingers rested in my lap, calm. Internally, I noted the contrast, her voice light but calculated, my mother's silence loud in its approval, the staff's awkward posture echoing the unspoken discomfort in the room. Even snakes slither with grace, I thought. That doesn't make them kind. I turned toward the assistant. Is my original gown available today, or will I need to return another time? She blinked, nodded quickly, then stepped out. The silence hung between us like static. Coraine busied herself examining a pair of ivory heels on the side table. Maribel started to speak, then thought better of it. A moment later, the assistant returned. We can have your dress ready in 10 minutes. Perfect, I said, turning to Coraine. Thanks for the preview. I'll take it from here. Coraine's expression flattened for just a second. Her jaw twitched, almost imperceptibly. I saw the first crack. They left quietly, not defeated, but exposed. Alone again, I began changing. As I stepped into the dress, smoothing the fabric along my hips, I caught my own eye in the mirror. Fool me once, I murmured, recalling the old phrase, shame on you, fool me twice. I'd spent most of my life handing over moments, under the guise of being the better person, the one who didn't cause scenes. And every time, those moments were borrowed temporarily, never returned. Today, I chose silence again. But it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. But I would not forget. I stepped out from behind the curtain, fully dressed, posture tall. The assistant smiled, genuine this time. She adjusted the train of the dress, complimented the fit. I nodded along. Then, a sudden shutter sound. I turned. Coraine stood in the hallway, phone in hand, mid-photo. She grinned. Just getting inspiration, she said, tapping the screen with exaggerated casualness. I didn't respond. I just held her gaze, turned back to the mirror, and smoothed the fabric one more time. As I walked past her, I whispered, try again, and regret. The scent of garlic and rosemary clung to my kitchen from a meal I never finished. I had started sautéing onions but left them half-cooked on low heat as I stood motionless by the window, one hand clutching my phone, the other gripping the edge of the counter. The boutique incident had ended, but it hadn't really. It had morphed into something else, something more internal. I glanced at the checklist taped to the fridge. Guest count, catering call, final gown pickup. I reached up, peeled it down slowly, and stared at it. Each line felt hollow. I folded the page in half, then again, and shoved it into the drawer beside the sink. I sat down at the dining table, laptop open, intending to update my RSVP site. The cursor blinked. I didn't type anything. Instead, I opened another tab, my voicemail. The first few were spam, then one labeled saved. I clicked. She's sweet, but let's be real. Coraine is the one who draws eyes. That voice. My mother's. From a family dinner 3 months ago. I'd gotten up to get water and paused near the hallway when I returned, caught by the familiar cadence of relatives talking without knowing they were being heard. She's always been the quieter one, another said. Some girls bloom. Some just stay. Laughter followed. Not malicious, just casual, unbothered, like discussing the weather. I remembered how I had smiled and walked back in like nothing happened, sat down, passed the salad, laughed along when someone joked about my posture being teacher's pettish. That night, after I'd gone home, I quietly canceled my booking at the Riverside venue I had loved since college. It was too much, I told myself. Over the top. Not really me, but it was. It had always been. And now, sitting here again, I realized that was the moment everything began to erode. Not just my wedding, my place, my voice, my sense of deserving anything in full view. My phone buzzed again. Don't escalate anything. You know how your mom is. A text from Dad. Short, tidy, passive. I read it 3 times. No follow-up. Just that. That had always been his role. The quiet buffer. The guy who changed the subject when Mom's tone got sharp or Coraine's eyes welled up for effect. I scrolled back through old messages and found another, years ago, when I had cried in my bedroom after being left out of Coraine's dance recital photos. His words then, "Let your sister have this one." I typed a reply to his message now. "I've let a lot of things go. This one won't be one of them. I deleted it. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote, "It's funny how we learn to smile while our names get edited out of family moments." Nora Ephron once said, "Above all, be the heroine of your life, not the victim." Was I anyone in mine, or just someone who held doors open for others to take the spotlight? I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt sharp, cold, almost. Like glass finally realizing it didn't have to be walked on. By late afternoon, I picked up my phone and dialed the boutique. "Hi," I said calmly. "I'd like my gown stored under restricted access. No one else, including family, should be allowed to request fittings, alterations, or viewings. Can you confirm that for me?" The assistant hesitated. "Yes, Ms. Hayes, absolutely. And I'd like to reschedule my final fitting privately, outside regular hours if possible." She noted it quickly, no pushback. I hung up. No text to Mom, no heads up to Fenella. This was mine. Evening fell slowly. I didn't bother turning on most lights, just a single lamp near the couch as I read through old messages on my phone, then deleted them. Not angrily, just cleansing. The next day, I stayed off social media. I focused on work emails, did laundry, organized some receipts. Normal things. But they felt different now, anchored, not reactionary. Then, mid-morning, a voicemail notification. I listened. "Hey, honey, Corinne said she left something in your room. I might swing by later, okay?" I replayed it. The tone was sweet, soft, but my gut tightened. Nothing gets left in my room. Nothing from Corinne has been in my space for years. And yet now, after the photo, the boutique disruption, the veil comments, they needed to come over. I sat down on the couch, crossed my arms, and thought, she's not done. Neither is Mom. And for once, I didn't clean the apartment, let them walk into my truth. When I returned to the boutique that afternoon, it felt like stepping into a room that had once held fire, but now just smelled of smoke. I had called ahead to confirm the appointment. Quietly, I'd asked that no one else be informed, not my mother, and certainly not Corinne. The assistant on the phone had paused long enough for me to imagine her face turning wary, but she agreed. Now, walking in, I was greeted by a different tone. Respectful, hesitant, even. The young woman at the front desk straightened and offered a polite smile. Her hands folded quickly over the counter like she wanted to signal they weren't hiding anything. "Welcome back, Ms. Hayes," she said. "Your gown is ready and in room 3. We've ensured it's completely private." I nodded, acknowledging the shift. The room was quieter this time, no laughter filtering in from another suite, no whispered confusion among the staff, but I could feel the echo of last time pressing at the edges. There was still tension, the kind that comes from something unresolved rather than something dangerous. Sometimes silence isn't peaceful. It's just waiting to erupt. Inside the fitting room, I took my time slipping into the gown. The assistant helped button the back, then stepped away with quiet efficiency. I stood in front of the mirror, taking in the clean lines, the simplicity, the fact that it had been chosen by me, for me. I had just turned slightly to view the hem from another angle when the door opened. Without knocking. "Just wanted to see how the dress fits on someone like you," Corinne said from the threshold, voice honeyed and sharp. My body stilled. She stepped inside casually, hands clasped in front of her like she was just there to admire fabric. Her smile was too wide. It was the kind of smile that came before a slap, not physical, but verbal. "She's in the car," Corinne added, referring to Mom like we both knew she'd be hovering nearby. "Didn't want to come in. Said she was giving us space." Space. My heart thudded, not in fear, but fury. I kept my gaze on the mirror for a beat longer, watching myself breathe. My hands were steady at my sides, though my throat felt tight. Then I turned and looked her dead in the eye. "Leave." One word. Level. Unshaken. She blinked. "Excuse me? You're not supposed to be here. You weren't invited to this appointment. You're violating my boundary. Leave." The smile faltered. "Not much, but enough." "You're being dramatic," she said, her voice lowering a pitch. "I'm just trying to help. You don't have to get so defensive." I didn't repeat myself, I didn't move. I simply waited. With an eye roll and an exaggerated sigh, she turned and walked out. No yelling, no public spectacle, just a line drawn, firmly and without apology. That night, as I sat on the couch in sweatpants trying to decompress, my phone lit up with a text from Rachel, a college friend I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Cute pic on Corain's page. But that caption? Weird? Confused, I opened Instagram. There she was, Corain, wearing my dress, not a replica, not something similar, my actual gown, the same one from her last preview appointment. The caption read, "Stepping in before someone steps out. #trial run." I stared at the screen. The audacity was mind-bending. The comments were a circus of confusion and passive aggression. Love this look. Wait, whose wedding? OMG, that neckline suits you better than anyone else I've seen wear it. And buried deep, one that caught my breath. Is this Aislin's dress? She wasn't just hijacking fittings anymore. She wanted the world to believe it was hers all along, that I was the stand-in and she was the rightful bride. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't repost. But I took a screenshot, then another, then every relevant message, tag, and timestamp. I created a folder on my desktop called "The Story I'll Tell When I'm Ready." And then I opened my journal. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I remembered that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, one I used to tape to my locker in high school when Corain got lead roles and I got stuck helping with props. How long had I let this narrative run its course? How long had I allowed my sister to stand center stage while I held the curtain ropes? Corain didn't want to share attention. She wanted to erase competition. She didn't just need to be seen, she needed others to disappear. And I'd made it easy. Not anymore. I drafted a short email to the boutique that night. To management, please formally restrict all access to my gown under the name Aislinn Hayes. No viewings, fittings, or appointments permitted to anyone but myself, regardless of relation. This is a firm directive. Thank you. No warmth, no smiley faces, just facts. I pressed send. Then, I attached all the screenshots and messages to a draft email, to myself. No recipient yet, just an archive, a receipt of my restraint. In my journal, I wrote one last sentence. Next time she crosses the line, I won't just ask her to leave. I'll show her the door. The next morning, I skipped breakfast. I wasn't hungry. I moved through tasks like clockwork, focusing more on what I could control. Late afternoon, my phone buzzed, a text from Maribel. Corain's thinking of doing a little pre-wedding shoot at the boutique. You won't mind, right? I stared at the screen. Not a question. A warning disguised as casual coordination. My chest tightened. Not with fear, with decision. They still believed I was the same girl who smiled through being passed over, who stayed quiet for the sake of dinner conversation, who handed over joy to keep peace. That girl was gone. The morning light filtered in through the blinds, casting striped shadows across my kitchen table. My journal lay open, pen poised above the page, but unmoving. I wasn't hesitating out of confusion, just fatigue. I was tired of having to explain my reactions, of measuring the volume of my voice to keep the peace. Even lions get tired of being quiet, especially when mice keep stealing their food. I tapped the pen against the edge of the page, finally writing, "The weight isn't in what they say, it's in everything they don't." Just as I lifted my coffee cup, my phone lit up with a message from Maribel. "Just stay graceful, honey. This wedding isn't worth bad blood." I stared at the text. Graceful, that was her favorite word when she meant silent. I reread it twice, as if my eyes would magically uncover a different meaning. But it was as clear as her message had always been. Keep your voice soft. Keep your spine flexible. Keep your sister comfortable. 2 nights ago, I had given her the benefit of the doubt. I had texted her to meet at a small cafe not far from her boutique. I thought, foolishly, that face-to-face would bring clarity, that maybe she'd blink and finally see me. We sat by the window. I ordered chamomile tea. She asked for her usual, black coffee, 2 creams, no sugar. "I need to ask you something," I began, careful not to let emotion overpower my tone. "Did you know about the boutique photo Corain posted?" Maribel didn't look surprised. She stirred her coffee slowly. "She just wanted to have fun. It was harmless." Harmless? I raised an eyebrow. She wore my dress. She posted it as if it was hers. You think that's harmless? Maribel sipped. Her voice was gentle. You've always been so strong, Ashlyn. You know your sister's under a lot of pressure. She's still not over that thing with Trevor. This isn't about Trevor, I snapped, my restraint thinning. This is about her stepping into everything I've built and pretending it was always hers. She tilted her head, as if offering sympathy without commitment. You've always handled things so maturely. Let her have this one. It's her way of feeling seen. And I'm what? The designated shadow? The emotional dump truck that absorbs her insecurities while she plays bride for clicks? Maribel set down her mug and folded her hands. Don't make it worse than it already is. That phrase echoed louder than anything she'd said. I stood up, left my tea untouched, and walked out without saying goodbye. Later that evening, I curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around me, phone in hand. I hadn't told Fenella about the cafe meeting yet. He was working late, as usual, but around 10, he called. I answered. Hey, I said, my voice low. Long day? He asked, already sounding distracted. I met with my mom, I said. Tried to talk about the boutique, and Karain. And everything. There was a pause. And, he finally said, she told me to let it go, that I've always been strong, and Karain needs this more. He exhaled. She's probably just trying to keep the family from falling apart. By pushing me out of my own wedding? Look, he said, I just want things to be smooth. Maybe we shouldn't focus on the petty stuff. Petty. That word hit like cold water down the back of my neck. You think being humiliated online is petty? I asked. I didn't say that, he replied, but I don't want to fight with your family. I'm not picking sides. That was when it hit me. He already had. By not picking a side, he picked theirs. We ended the call with no real resolution. I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind swirled through years of quietly being overlooked, expected to be the one who handled things, gracefully, of course. A quote from high school floated back to me. My English teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, had once told us, some things break not because they're weak, but because they've held too much for too long. I pulled my journal from the nightstand and wrote, I'm not breaking, I'm spilling. The next morning, I didn't wait for someone to fix it. I opened the Bridal group chat, me, Maribel, Karain, and typed one sentence. If anyone wants to use the boutique again, they can pay for a new one. This one's closed. Then I left the chat and deleted it. Next, I logged into the custom veil designer's site and placed a rush order for a new piece, one no one had seen, one that wouldn't be snapped in a photo and claimed by someone else. Not revenge, ownership. By early afternoon, I was at the boutique again, this time just to pick up a sample swatch of fabric. The assistant smiled nervously, but didn't say much. I was efficient, no extra questions, no lingering. On the way home, my phone stayed quiet. No reply from Maribel, no defensive text from Karain. Not even a thumbs-up emoji from Fenella. I expected rage, or backlash, or even guilt. Instead, there was nothing. And somehow that silence felt louder than any scream. I arrived 10 minutes early for my appointment, carrying only my bag and resolve. The receptionist greeted me by name this time. No hesitation, no confusion. She offered me a bottle of water and directed me to room 2, the room I had originally requested weeks ago. The boutique's tone had changed. Their glances no longer carried pity or amusement, just a hint of caution and a lot of quiet respect. I slipped into the gown with practiced ease. The alterations had been done precisely. No one had touched it since my last visit. It fit better than before, as if the fabric had memorized my shape. As I stood before the mirror, running a hand down the front seam, I caught my reflection looking back not as a bride, but as a woman who had chosen to stop yielding. I didn't walk in looking for war. I came to put on peace. Then the door slammed open. Ashlyn! Karain's voice cracked like a whip, slicing through the quiet space. She was in full makeup, still wearing her coat, as if she had sprinted straight from her car. Before I could respond, she charged into the room. You manipulated Mom into banning me? Into freezing the account? She shouted. Do you know what kind of embarrassment that caused? Behind her, Maribel appeared, breathless. She didn't try to stop her. Coraine, this isn't the time, I began, stepping back from the mirror. This is exactly the time, Coraine cut in. You're making everything about you. You're always the victim, but you're the one turning people against me. I took another step back, trying to keep distance, not fear, but she was already close. You're embarrassing the family, she hissed. You're making a scene in public like some desperate... She lunged. Before I could move, she grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked. The sharp pain shot through my scalp. I stumbled, falling sideways as the hem of my dress caught the corner of the bench. The tear ripped clean across the bottom seam, echoing louder than her scream. There was a collective gasp. The boutique staff froze, unsure whether to intervene or not. A mother with her teenage daughter across the room shielded the girl's eyes. Then, someone started recording. And suddenly, a voice, low but unwavering, cut through the chaos. Touch her again, and you'll regret it. I turned my head toward the entrance. There stood a tall man in a dark blazer, expression unreadable, but calm in the way a courtroom judge might be. He wasn't familiar, but his presence shifted the room instantly. Coraine faltered. Maribel finally stepped forward, trying to place a hand on her arm. Is this a family matter? The man asked, tone even. No, I said before anyone else could. This is assault. He nodded slowly. Did anyone call the police? One of the assistants lifted her phone. I'm on it. The man stepped into the room slightly, not close enough to threaten, just enough to draw a boundary around me. This isn't a family dispute, he said firmly. It's public aggression. I learned later his name was Patrice. He had seen the prior boutique post go viral and happened to be nearby. He'd come by the boutique not to stir drama, but because, in his words, people like Coraine bank on silence. Coraine looked stunned, as if someone had slapped her without touching her. She turned to Maribel. You're just going to let this stranger get involved? But Maribel stayed silent. When the police arrived, they separated us. Coraine's voice grew shriller by the minute. She protested being recorded, accused me of staging it, even tried to claim I had started the physical contact. But 3 staff members, plus a mother-daughter pair, all verified what had happened. The officer who took my statement handed me a card with the incident number and offered assistance filing a civil complaint if I chose to. I looked down at the torn hem of the dress. My hands were trembling, but I wasn't crying. Patrice stepped forward again. Would you like me to stay until they finish? He asked. Yes, I said. Please, just not alone anymore. The boutique issued an apology immediately. The manager offered to remake the dress at no cost and assigned a private seamstress for all future appointments. I accepted, but with one condition. I wanted a copy of the incident report, for records, for proof. Patrice handed me his card before leaving. If you ever need a witness, he said, or just someone who sees things as they are, call me. By the time I got home that night, I had already received 3 text messages from friends. One included a link to a TikTok. There I was, half crouched, dress torn, eyes wide but steady. Caption: This is not how sisters act. Our wedding warfare. The comments were pouring in. She stayed so calm. That woman with the torn dress is stronger than the one screaming. Who lets this happen in a bridal boutique? And then one that made my stomach twist, but not in fear. She's the real bride, even if the dress was ruined. They saw me at my worst, and somehow it became my power. I woke to a phone lit up like an emergency room monitor, dozens of missed calls and a flood of texts that had arrived while I slept, from Maribel, from Coraine, even from numbers I didn't recognize, all of them demanding, panicked, vaguely accusatory. I didn't open them. I didn't need to, because I already knew what they were about. Scrolling past them, I found a voicemail. I tapped play. If you care about this family, you'll take that video down. Maribel's voice. Tight, controlled. A soft demand wrapped in the tone of maternal disappointment. That was her signature. Not yelling, not pleading, just the insinuation that love meant compliance. Care about the family? When has it ever cared for me? The screen lit again, vibrating with another call. I pressed the side button to silence it and flipped the phone face down. Not 2 hours later, my phone rang again, this time from a blocked number. I answered, against my better judgment. "Aislinn," Maribel began. Her voice carried a tremor of forced composure. "We need to talk." "You mean you need me to delete the video?" I said. She didn't skip a beat. "That video is damaging. Do you want the whole family's name dragged through this mess?" I didn't respond immediately. I waited, let the silence sit with her. "I didn't make the mess," I said, voice firm. "I was attacked, publicly, in your presence." "We don't need to relive it," she cut in. "You've always been so good at keeping things dignified. I raised you to be above petty revenge." "You raised me to absorb," I snapped, "to smile through slights and hide bruises beneath fabric and grace." She sighed. "Your father has colleagues. People are asking questions. Karain's reputation." "Karain's reputation?" I let out a short laugh. "What about mine?" "You know how delicate your sister is," she added. I closed my eyes. She dragged me by the hair, in a bridal store. "That's not delicate. That's deranged." "Aislinn," she warned. "No. You don't get to pull the family first card after everything. You can't throw that phrase around like it's a leash." She changed her tone. "Look, be smart. Take it down. Let's handle this quietly. People are already laughing. Don't make it worse." Then came a text from Karain. "Be smart. You can't undo viral damage, but you can protect what's left." They weren't calling out of concern. They were calling to contain the fallout. Not one message asked if I was okay. Instead, I was expected to erase my own humiliation to protect their image. By that afternoon, the narrative had already shifted. A post from a distant cousin surfaced on Facebook. "Sad to see both sisters lose it like that. Public drama is never the answer." I sat on my couch and read it twice. Then came another. "Weddings bring out the worst. Hope they figure it out." And then Karain posted a filtered selfie. Caption: "When someone uses your worst moment for attention, maybe they were never family to begin with." No name, no direct accusation, but everyone knew who she meant. The comments section was a battleground. Some rallied behind her. "You're so strong for staying silent. Ignore the haters." Others didn't. "I saw the video. You weren't silent. You were violent." "Gaslight harder, girl." My phone buzzed again. "Fenella." He texted, "I think you should remove the post. Let things cool down." I typed back, "I didn't post it, but I'm not taking blame for something I didn't create or cause." He didn't reply. By nightfall, I had gone numb. Not the numb of depression, but the numb of calculation. I gathered every text, every screenshot, every video clip, every public post and private message. I saved the voicemails, categorized the media files, and created a folder labeled, "For When They Twist Again." Oprah once said, "You teach people how to treat you by what you allow." I had allowed too much. The next day, I sat across from a legal consultant at a quiet law office near Main Street. The woman was calm, sharp, and didn't flinch when I laid everything out. "You have a strong civil case," she said. "Not just assault, but defamation. This goes beyond personal. It's reputational." I nodded. "But we don't have to file now," she added. "We can prepare everything. If they try to spin this again, we respond. On your terms." That's all I needed. Not a bomb, just a fuse. I thanked her and left. I didn't text Fenella. I didn't update Maribel. I didn't respond to Karain's emoji-stuffed apology that appeared 2 days too late. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, recorded a short video of myself speaking calmly, just in case I needed it later. I didn't post it. I just wanted it ready. I titled it, "My Name, My Truth." Later that evening, as I folded laundry and tried to pretend things were ordinary, my phone stayed eerily still. No one from the family reached out. Then, finally, a voicemail from Maribel. "If you walk away now," her voice said, low and even, "don't expect to be welcomed back." I pressed save. Named the file, closure.mp3. The text came mid-morning, wrapped in politeness and manipulation like a gift box holding a mousetrap. "Let's meet. No sides. Just family. Dinner. Thursday at 6. Love, Mom. No sides, she said. But I knew what that meant. Sit down. Be quiet. Let Coraine cry and make herself the victim again. Let Dad avoid eye contact. Let Fenella try to mediate while looking everywhere but at me. Still, I agreed. But on my terms. No restaurant. No boutique. No middle ground. We'll meet at the house, I replied. Dining room. No cameras. No third-party guests. Her reply was instant. Of course. Just us. Just us. I packed the folder the night before, labeled, dated, printed. I didn't intend to burn anyone, but if they kept handing me matches, I wasn't going to stand in the rain apologizing for being flammable. Sometimes you walk into fire not to burn, but to show them you no longer fear it. I arrived precisely at 6. Not early, not late. I wore black again, not out of mourning but intention. Black doesn't beg to be seen, it commands it. The table was already set, white linens, polished silver, wine glasses filled just enough to suggest hospitality, but not enough to celebrate. Maribel stood at the head of the table, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the cloth. Coraine was seated to her right, arms crossed over a cashmere shawl. Fenella sat to the left, eyes down, shoulders slightly hunched like he was already preparing to say nothing useful. Maribel motioned to the seat directly across from her. Ashlyn, honey, sit. We're here to move forward. I didn't sit. If we're not discussing the past, I said calmly, then I won't need long. I'm here for closure, not compromise. They blinked. Maribel opened her mouth to respond, but I beat her to it. I placed the folder on the table, centered it like a knife at a dinner party. This is a civil complaint, I said. Not yet filed, but fully drafted. Coraine's expression flickered, first confusion, then panic. Maribel's smile cracked at the edges. What are you talking about? I didn't raise my voice. It includes documented harassment, verbal abuse, physical assault, caught on video, as well as public defamation and the mishandling of a private gown. You wouldn't, Coraine started. I haven't, yet, I said, but I will, unless this ends, now. Coraine burst into tears. You manipulated this entire situation. You made me look like a monster. Maribel gasped, reached for the folder. Ashlyn, this is your sister. You wouldn't really do this to her. I slid the folder back to my side. I've filed this not to destroy anyone, but to stop the story you've written over mine. They stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Fenella hadn't moved. Before the room could reset, I pulled a second sheet of paper from my purse. This is a statement from your boutique's floor manager, I said. She witnessed Coraine mocking me, undermining me, and attempting to steal a fitting. Maribel's lips parted. It's signed, I added, and laid it on top of the folder. Coraine's tears slowed. Her defense crumbled. She looked to Fenella, silently begging him to step in. I turned to him. You sat beside me while I bled metaphorically, and you called it a misunderstanding. He didn't deny it. He just looked away. And you, I said, facing Maribel, taught me that love meant grace, but what you meant was silence. I stood up, tucked the folder back into my bag, and looked each of them in the eye. I'm not your bride. I'm not your backdrop. I'm done playing polite. Maribel stood, reaching for my arm. Ashlyn, please. I pulled away. Try again. And regret. No one followed me as I walked to the door. No one called my name, and there was no dramatic door slam. Just the sound of the lock I placed behind me. The invitation called it a celebration brunch, hosted by distant cousins and signed, of course, by Maribel. I almost didn't go. I stared at the RSVP email for 2 straight minutes before closing my laptop without replying. But something in me, something colder, steelier, knew I needed to show up. Not for them, for me. I arrived wearing black again. This time, not out of symbolism, but ease. It fit. It told people I wasn't there for games or apologies. The community center had been rented out, a modest buffet set up along one wall, soft jazz playing from a Bluetooth speaker someone forgot to turn off during a commercial break. As soon as I stepped in, Conversations dimmed like a switch had been thrown. They saw me and quieted. Funny how rooms that used to drown you out go silent the moment they fear what you might say. I nodded at a few people I recognized but didn't approach anyone. No small talk, no fake hugs. I moved through the crowd like a surgeon, precise, untouchable. Afanella was already there, standing near the drinks, pretending to read the label on a bottle of sparkling cider. He looked up, met my eyes, and then quickly looked away. Karain was in the center, of course, dressed in soft lavender, laughing too loudly, touching people's arms too often. She always used charm as a shield, and she needed it today more than ever. "Aslan, sweetie!" My Aunt Lois appeared out of nowhere and linked her arm through mine. "You look serious." "I am," I replied, smiling just enough to pass as polite. She leaned in. "You know, it wouldn't kill you to just let her have this. She's been through so much." "I didn't take anything from her," I said, not bothering to whisper. "She took it from me." Lois blinked, then forced a chuckle. "Well, you've always been the strong one." "I've been the quiet one," I corrected. "There's a difference." As she walked away, another cousin appeared, someone I hadn't spoken to since college. He gave me a sympathetic smile. "Just know, some of us see through the noise." That was all I needed. The speeches began. Maribel took the mic first. "We just want to thank everyone for being here, for supporting this journey, especially Karain, who's taken so much initiative these past few months. From organizing appointments to helping finalize decorations, she's been a blessing." There it was. Not a single mention of me, not one acknowledgement that this event, this wedding, was mine, that I'd done the planning, paid the deposits, chosen the colors, designed the invites. I cleared my throat. "Actually," Maribel raised a hand gently. "Not now, Ashlyn. This isn't about you." Gasps were audible. No one moved. I sat down slowly, not defeated, focused. 20 minutes later, I walked past a group of guests toward the restroom and caught my name being spoken behind the partition wall near the kitchen. "I mean, poor thing," said a voice I knew all too well. "Karain. She has a history with anxiety, so all this attention is probably overwhelming." Another voice. "Is she okay?" I noticed she looked stiff. Karain again. "She'll be fine. She just doesn't always cope well with big crowds." I stepped out from behind the corner and entered the hallway where they stood. The group fell silent. I looked directly at Karain. "Don't weaponize empathy to hide cruelty." She opened her mouth. I didn't let her speak. "You can't paint me as fragile while setting fires behind my back. Being emotionally injured doesn't give you the right to injure others." Nobody said a word. Then someone, an old friend of my dad's, I think, clapped. Once, then again. A few others followed. Karain's face paled. She turned and left the hallway without a word. I walked back to the main room. This time people looked at me differently. Some with curiosity, others with guilt, a few with respect. For the rest of the brunch, I didn't hide. I talked. I stood tall. I smiled at people who once dismissed me and gave short, honest answers to people who tried to spin small talk into gossip. One woman came over quietly and said, "I didn't know the full story. We only heard one version." I nodded. "You're hearing mine now." Vanilla stayed in the background. I could feel his eyes on me, but he never approached, and I didn't approach him. When the event ended, I left without saying goodbye to anyone. Back at my apartment, I removed my shoes and stood barefoot in the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't exhale dramatically. I simply stood in the space I paid for, in a life I was now rebuilding from truth, not performance. I opened my laptop and typed a line in my journal. "Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage." Brené Brown said that, and she was right. This wasn't healing. It was acknowledgement. And sometimes, acknowledgement is the real beginning. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Fenella. "Maybe we should talk before the rehearsal dinner." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled out the invitation box from my closet, the one I never mailed. Only a few were addressed. One envelope sat on top. My name had been scratched out. In its place, written in blue pen, +1. The courthouse smelled like paper, disinfectant, and resignation. I walked through the front doors wearing slate gray from head to toe. My dress fitted, understated, and deliberate. Not bridal, not mourning. Something that said, I'm not here to beg, I'm here to be heard. They didn't show up for me. But today, I showed up for myself. Patrice met me just inside the security checkpoint. He didn't say much, just nodded once like we were already on the same page. No dramatics, no pep talk. Everything had already been filed, everything documented. My job now was to stand, speak, and finish what they never thought I'd start. In courtroom C3, I took my seat, back straight, hands folded over the folder that had traveled with me through every meeting, every breakdown. The judge entered. The court clerk called the case. Coraine didn't come. Maribel submitted a letter, some generic page dressed in concern and apology. She couldn't make it. Emotional strain, it said. But I made it, and so did the truth. I stood, hands no longer shaking, and spoke. I described the incident in the boutique, the dress, the hair yank, the screaming, the video, the posts, the manipulation. I handed over screenshots, printed messages, audio clips, each one stamped, sorted, indisputable. The judge asked precise questions. I answered clearly. Even the bailiff raised an eyebrow once, as if surprised by the weight of what I'd endured in silence for so long. The courtroom wasn't full, but a few people sat in the back, likely law students or curious reporters. I noticed one woman typing rapidly on a laptop. I didn't care. I hoped they took notes. The judge ruled decisively, a protective civil order against Coraine, a fine levied on the boutique for negligence in security, and a verbal commendation to me for my composure and detailed documentation. Outside, the air was colder than I expected. A young woman with a microphone approached, followed by a man with a camera. Are you Ashlyn Hayes? I paused. Yes? We're from Local 5. We saw the footage. We'd like to ask you. I raised my hand gently. Not today. They backed off, professional but disappointed. Patrice reappeared at my side. Well handled. Thanks, I said, turning to him. Do you do this often? Watch people unravel their families in public? He smiled. Actually, I'm a consultant. I work with a media group that documents family dynamics, especially the ones people pretend don't exist. You'd be surprised how many people watch these stories and finally feel seen. I blinked. Is this a pitch? An invitation, he replied. To speak off camera, if that's easier. Just your words, your lens. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Some stories matter more when told by the ones who lived through being unheard, he added. I tucked that phrase away. I didn't need a platform. But I did need to finish mine. By evening, the boutique had posted a statement. Public, tagged. We apologize to Ashlyn Hayes for the mishandling of her fitting experience and the subsequent incident. We take full responsibility and are reviewing all internal protocols. Comments flooded in. About time? This store let that happen? Glad someone finally stood up. One comment from a former employee stood out. Glad someone finally stood up to the favoritism. Long overdue. I clicked on her profile. One I remembered vaguely. She used to steam dresses in the back room while listening to customers' confessions. Coraine's Instagram was gone. Deleted. Not hidden. Erased. She built her world on praise. It couldn't survive without it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. That night, I lit a candle in my apartment. Not for peace or ambiance, for finality. I pulled out my wedding journal. The one filled with guest lists and seating charts and notes about florals I'd never see. I tore out the first half, every page where I had written things with them in mind. Then I started again. I thought silence was survival, but truth is breath. I wrote that in all caps. The knock at the door came just as I capped my pen. I opened it to find Fenella. Not with flowers, not with tears, just standing there with uncertainty. I didn't know how to be on your side, he said. I thought staying neutral was enough. I looked him in the eye. Neutrality is silence in disguise. I didn't wake up to a ringing phone or a knock on the door. No messages buzzed through my screen demanding apologies or explanations. For once, there was no noise, just morning light crawling up the walls and the faint hiss of my kettle heating water. I moved slowly, deliberately, taking time to select my favorite mug, the one with the faded sunflower, and filled it with tea. No rushing, no spiraling, no adjusting myself for someone else's comfort. The quiet wasn't empty this time. It was earned. There were unread messages, of course. My phone showed 6 notifications from numbers I didn't care to save. I didn't open them. I wasn't interested in who suddenly wanted to check in. For the first time, their voices didn't matter more than mine. I sat on the couch, legs curled under me, hands warm from the mug, and let the morning carry me. Maribel hadn't called. Coraine hadn't posted. Quinlan had sent one line. "Hope you're okay." Nothing else. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt spared. Later that morning, as I folded laundry, I found an old scarf tucked behind the dryer. I remembered hiding in my bedroom closet once, age 9, clutching that scarf to my face while voices downstairs cracked and echoed. Coraine had been sobbing about a lost trophy. Dad had said something soft. Mom had said something sharp. I had stayed quiet, knowing better. That silence felt like peace then. Now, it felt like freedom. Around noon, my phone lit up again. This time, it was from Fenella. "I'll be at the park today, if you'd like to talk." No pressure, no demand. But I knew what it meant. I put on jeans and a t-shirt, pulled my hair into a clean ponytail, and left with nothing but my phone and house key. I saw him on a bench near the fountain, hands in his lap, shoulders squared like he'd practiced a speech he wasn't sure he'd get to finish. I sat beside him, leaving space. "I messed this up," he said before I could speak. I waited. "I didn't know how to defend you without burning bridges. I thought if I stayed neutral, we could still make it work." "Then you weren't defending me," I replied. "You were protecting them." He nodded. "Maybe." "Not maybe," I said. "Definitely." Silence stretched. He looked at me. "Do you still want to get married?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out the ring, and placed it gently on the bench between us. "I want a marriage built on backbone, not balancing acts." He didn't reach for it. I stood. "Goodbye, Fenella." No fanfare, no slammed doors, just a choice made aloud. Back home, I wrote in my journal, "I lost the dress, I lost the ring, but I didn't lose myself." That sentence carried more weight than any vow I had written. I thought of something Toni Morrison once said, "If you want to fly, you gotta give up the things that weigh you down." I tore out every journal entry written before the trial. Then I stepped onto my balcony with a metal bowl, struck a match, and watched the pages curl into ash. One by one. No tears. Just peace. That evening, I opened the white box of wedding invitations I had never mailed. Only a handful had names written on them. Patrice, the boutique manager who testified. Everyone else was blank. I picked out those 2, placed them in a new envelope, and slid the rest back into the box. Sealed it with tape, wrote on the top, "Lessons." Then I placed it on the top shelf of my closet. Out of reach, but not forgotten. Before bed, I logged into my RSVP site and updated the headline. "The bride has chosen another path." Just as I hit save, a new email pinged in. Subject line, "Let's talk storytelling, Patrice." I clicked it open, read the opening line, and smiled. It should have been a wedding day. Instead, it was a beginning. I woke up before sunrise, not because I had somewhere to be, but because my body was finally rested, not worn down by obligations, not weighed by worry, just still. I didn't put on white. I chose a sleek black jumpsuit, tailored, sharp, not mourning, not celebrating, just me, stepping fully into my own frame. The invitation to speak at the community storytelling event had arrived quietly through Patrice's team. No bold letters, no fanfare, just the offer of a mic and a chair. Today, I was supposed to walk down someone else's aisle. Instead, I walked into my own story. The room was modest. Folding chairs, mismatched rugs, a single mic stand, no camera crews. But eyes, dozens of them, ready to listen. I stepped onto the small stage, adjusted the mic, and paused. Sometimes, I began, the most painful stories are the ones we keep silent, not because they're untrue, but because we fear no one will believe them. My voice didn't waver. This is not a tale about being wronged. This is about reclaiming the right to tell the truth. I spoke of dignity, of manipulation behind smiles, of erasure masked as tradition. We are taught to perform, to keep the peace, to yield even when the ground beneath us is ours. A woman in the back nodded, tears in her eyes. Another man held his breath like the story belonged to him, too. Some people spend their lives performing for approval. Others— I paused, let the silence hold. Others write their own damn scripts. Applause didn't explode. It grew. From one person, then three, then the room. Patrice stood at the back, hands clasped, eyes steady. No notes, no edits, just resonance. Across town, Corain's wedding struggled. Barely half the guests arrived. Rumors circled like flies. Online, the TikTok clip had passed 2 million views, and with it, public sentiment had shifted. Sympathy leaned my way. Comments flooded in. She didn't deserve that. Family doesn't mean free pass. I hope she finds peace. A luxury skincare brand dropped Corain's name from an upcoming promo, quietly, strategically. Maribel was seen crying by the dessert table. Quinlan didn't make a statement. He didn't need to. That evening, he sent me a single photo via text. Me, age 6, holding a paper crown. A note followed. I see you now. I didn't reply, but I saved it. By sunset, I returned home and opened the sealed envelope from Patrice's team. A formal offer, a chance to collaborate on a limited docuseries about narrative ownership and personal resilience. I didn't hesitate. Let's do it, I told him by phone. But my name goes on every credit. Of course, he replied. It's your story. I began moving into a new loft that weekend. Clean floors, blank walls. A space untouched by expectations. A place I chose. From the closet, I retrieved the sealed box labeled Lessons. Inside, the veil I never wore. I framed it, not to remember pain, but to remind myself of what I walked away from. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to be chosen, and I started choosing. Later that night, I sat at my desk, the window open, autumn air cool on my skin. I opened a blank document and began typing. Chapter 1. I wasn't chosen. I chose myself. And maybe the most radical thing a woman can do is refuse to shrink.